Okay, I've got a 2005 Cub Cadet RZT 50 here that has a problem with a weak hydrostatic transmission on the right hand side. So the symptom is this mower will run for about 20 minutes with pretty good performance, but the longer it runs, the right side becomes weaker and weaker and becomes almost unusable. There's another video I shot of this from last year where I changed the oil. It did make some improvements, but ultimately that transmission is failing. So we need to rebuild the transmission. And this video is designed to show you how to go about doing that. Before we get started, I want to share with you I'm a pastor and a Christian, and I would love it if you'd take just a minute to slip over to that other video on my channel, How to Become a Christian, and take a peek. And with that said, let's get started. The wheel there in the front, and I am going to loosen the lug nuts here and jack up the back, put it on stands, and remove that rear wheel. So got it up on jack stands and got the wheel removed. So the transmission is pretty easy to get out of the unit here. There's a couple of cotter pins we need to pull. There's one right behind here. I can't show it, but it's back here. And then there's another right here. And this will remove the linkage that's in the way. After we get those pins out, underneath you'll see two bolts there. And of course, the two nuts are on the bottom, two bolts on the top. So those have to be removed. And then finally, there are some very long bolts that run through the bottom here, 1 and 2. So they have to be held on the left side and loosened over here on the right side. And once those things are done, this will drop out. So might want to leave these in till last, because this would be easy to remove. So I think I'll do the others first and pull this transmission and let you take a look at it on the bench. What's in the way is the belt that runs around the engine pulley there and then both of the transmissions. And in order to get that belt off, I need a little slack. And underneath here is the belt tensioning spring. So I'm just going to take a pair of pliers and engage the spring here and pull it and relieve this tension off of this slot, and then the belt will drop straight off. One more bolt here in the front of the transmission, right there. Going to remove that and it will drop straight out. See, one more linkage pin that I was not aware of and just found. You'll see it there. This gold kind of rod here, up in here, and there's a cotter pin behind that joint, and it's really hard to show. There it is. And remove that and slide that out, and the transmission will drop down. The unit, the transmission out of the unit. I would say I have about 20 minutes so far in this job, and I've been shooting video along the way. As you can see, it's very dirty, so the next thing we're going to do is take some degreaser, a brush, and a garden hose and thoroughly clean this. When I open up the transmission, I do not want any of that debris falling inside. That would obviously be a problem. So let's get it cleaned up, and then we'll start the disassembly process. I'm degreasing and cleaning this up. The overflow vent, we don't want to get water inside of that. So it's pretty well sealed. I'm just going to keep this pointed down and keep all of my spray from going up inside that tube, and I think we should be perfectly fine. It's a sealed unit, so that should work just fine. The transmission looks a lot better now that it's all cleaned up. So I just want to take a little time now and with some compressed air, I'm going to dry it off as best I can. I just want to make sure no water contaminates the inside of the transmission, and then we'll start with the disassembly. All cleaned and dried up. I did want to show you which model this is. So there's the information on the hydrostatic drive and the model number. So obviously this comes apart in a couple of different directions. The pump assembly is here with the fan. The output drive is here. But clearly the majority of the disassembly is going to occur here. This is where I want to start. I've never disassembled one before. But this is where I'm going to begin. I want to remove this plate and I want to take a look inside. Now if you're wondering what am I looking for? Well, along the pump assembly there is a swash plate that seals the pressure for the rotating pistons. And I suspect that part of the assembly has been scratched by probably debris. And what's likely happening is I'm getting fluid blow-by. So I have pressure, but the pressure leaks, and as it warms up, what's going on is the oil thins and you get more leakage out of that failure point, and you get a loss of drive out of the output. So what I think I need to do next is to build a simple stand so that I can invert this and put it on its side and work from this as the top. It's probably wise also if I go ahead and take this out and drain as much of the oil as possible, because it's probably going to be messy when I open it up. So let me get something put together. I'm going to drain the oil, put something together, and I'll let you take a peek. Here's what I've come up with. A couple of jack stands on my tables, 2x2 that goes right in the slot of that transmission, just perfect. And I've got the axle at the right height. So this is pretty stable. It's not perfect, but I can certainly work with it there. And I've laid out some racks because I'm going to put my parts out in order. And what I want to do next is I'm going to take off this bolt and remove this brake assembly. This pin right here I'm going to pull out and remove the gear, and then simply remove all of the bolts around the outside perimeter of the transmission, and I should be able to see inside once I do that. So that's what I'm after next, and I'll give you a peek inside. All of the bolts off, hardware off. Now I need to break free the gasket that has sealed this entire unit. And what I don't want to do is drive a screwdriver in here and damage the face of either the cover plate or the body, because then it's going to leak. So along the sides, the manufacturer has provided some lift points where I can come in here, put my screwdriver without worrying about damage, twist and lift. There's one on this side. There's also one right there. Let's see. Right there. Okay, this allows me to remove the cover without damaging it. So let me get that off and we will continue to see what's inside. Here is the cover off, and this is just not terribly complex. There's the output gear there. Here's an intermediate gear. The pump comes in through the top here, and then the actual transmission, which has the pistons that thrust back and forth and give you either forward or reverse, is here. Now I still don't know what is wrong with this transmission, but one thing that I've already noticed, if you look, and it's going to be hard for me to get the lighting down in there, but let's see, if you look down there, there's a filter right there, and you can there it is. Look at that filter. It's got a number of metal parts sitting there, and which is not good, and it's also on the back side underneath. So I'm not sure how this operates perfectly, but that gives me a clue that there's been some definite failure, and it could just be that the filter is clogged and you get low fluid pumping through, or it could be that there's actually a damaged part such as the pump. I doubt the pump, but nonetheless we're going to take this the rest of the way apart, and I'll tell you what I find. I'm going to continue to disassemble here to try to find the part that has created all of these metal shavings I showed earlier. I noticed right away, right here, that is a peculiar looking indentation there. It doesn't look like something that would be machined. It looks like something that is chafed or broken. So I think there's a possibility that what's happening is that the filter is clogged with metal parts from there, but I'm not sure. So we're going to keep taking a peek and let you know when we find out more. Pause for a moment and show you where I am. Just remove some of the guts of the transmission, really just the external components, and all I'm doing is just laying them out in order so that I have them in place to reassemble. So I'm currently on this side, disassembling this. Nothing is particularly unique. Fasteners, snap rings, the usual stuff you'll find on a repair like this. So I'm going to finish disassembling this by removing that bolt, and then that should allow me to begin to take apart this stuff up here, the pump, and then finally get to this portion that I think has failed. This is all taken apart for the most part. So the output shaft is still in there with that main gear, and there's still a bearing down inside of there, but all the guts are out. Here is the pump at the top. And then, you know, the swash plate is at the top. That's what gives you forward and reverse and moving those pistons around. And then here's the output part of the pump. And then for the other parts, these are just laid out in a row, so you remember the back case cover. This is the control lever. There's the case, the top of that case we took off, and then these are the other parts. So it's not crazy. It was difficult to take apart. There were some bolts that were stuck, snap rings. There was these plastic seals that were they're pretty deep. If you look from the side, they're pretty deep, and they're a little challenging to get out. So it is a little challenging, but not too bad. Now as to the failure, so the only thing I found so far is that original place that we located here that looks really out of place. I haven't gone through it in detail, but so far that's all I found. So let me get all this cleaned up, and we'll see if we can make a definitive answer as to what's causing it to fail, and then we'll start our rebuild. Look this over and identify the problem as to why this transmission is failing. And I definitely think it's this centerpiece here. I still don't know if this is a problem. It appears to be. But what is obvious is the face of this center. Of course, this is made of aluminum, and your pistons are steel, and they slide together. And on this portion, this is nice and smooth all the way around. There's still a film of oil left, and it's very easy for me to slide my finger. I don't feel any scratches. However, on the output side, as I turn this to the side here, this, I think you can see, is scratched up. It's not a lot of scratches, but it is scratched up. And you can actually, I can feel it with my finger, especially right up in here. So probably what's happening is we're getting fluid blow by here, and rather than driving the output set of pistons, the fluid returns and the energy is unused. And that would also explain why when the fluid is cold and nice and thick, you get very little of that. But then as the fluid heats up, it thins out, and that is exactly what I was looking for. So I ordered a new center. That was $116, and then I ordered a seal kit because a lot of the seals that I took off were damaged as I removed them. So I need to replace those. And we're going to begin reassembly as soon as those arrive in a couple days, and we'll continue to shoot video and let you see the progress. Parts have arrived here, and I wanted to show you a few details. First of all, here's the old part we've looked at a couple of times. There's the indentation that we're concerned about, and then also the face that was all scratched up here. Here's the new part. Notice it is missing that indentation, and the face is, of course, perfectly smooth. So I believe this will correct the problem. I was also able to order a seal kit. I got all this from Hydrogear. Again, the price was about $160 for the seal kit and the new part. And then also online, I was able to download the instruction manual and rebuild instructions here, all for free. So we're in good shape. So we're going to begin reassembly, and I'll try to highlight a couple of areas. I won't describe every part. It would take too long. Again, most of this is pretty straightforward. Fasteners and such. So if you've made it this far, you're likely able to get it back together, but I'll hit a few highlights along the way as I'm reassembling. On this centerpiece, you'll notice right here is a part of the bypass. This little piece right here slides in that slot. It falls out very easily. It'd be easy to not see it fall out when you reassembled it. And if this is not in place, the transmission will not work properly. You can use a little bit of assembly lube to stick it up in there if you want to. But anyway, I want to make sure you saw that so you didn't put the whole thing back together and then feel frustrated. 41 foot-pounds on these three bolts that hold in the center section. I used a little motor oil when assembling to make sure I didn't scratch the face of this aluminum again. And it went back together pretty easily. I did use this as a guide plate or guide pin. Same with the top. Use this as a guide pin as I reassembled to make sure everything was nice and aligned and moves freely. So this one actually moves a little more freely because the swash plate is level. The case is the swash plate on this one. It's always tipped for return fluid. So this one spins freely, but I'm having to compress those piston springs, and so that one's a little more difficult, but it looks like we're in good shape. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is just begin reassembling everything. It's pretty straightforward. I do also need to clean the gasket surface all the way around with a razor, get that nice and clean on both the cover plate and the case so I can reapply some gasket sealant. We'll do that in just a minute. Everything back together here, and I've created a gasket with high temperature sealant. I don't know that you need to use high temperature, but didn't seem like a good reason not to use it, so I did. Couple of notes. This gear assembly will lift up if it's supported like this. So that threw me off for a little bit because this gear was raised and I couldn't get everything to mesh. But then I just figured out it slides back down. It wasn't a big deal. Yeah, I think that's it. So now I'm just going to put on the cover. It has a lot of things that have to align. So I test fitted it here, 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 and then you also have dowel pins here and here. So I'm going to work that in, and then the bolts for around the edge are to be tightened to 105 to 155 inch-pounds. And the unit should be just about done. So hopefully the next video will be this back in the unit with it cranked up and running. Okay, it's time to fill the unit back up with fluid. Here's the fill point right here. You remove this Allen and you can use a funnel to get fluid in there. It holds 1.7 quarts. Probably going to wait until overnight and allow this RTV to sealant to harden up. But should be able to do that tomorrow and put it back in the unit, and we would be in good shape to see if this works. Filling the unit back up here, it takes 20 W50 motor oil, and again 1.7 quarts. I don't think it'll hold all 1.7 quarts because the unit is completely dry now, so all the pistons and cylinders are empty. So I'm going to get as much as I can in there, reinstall it, crank it up and let it pump for a little bit, and show you how to purge the air out, and then finish filling it off. Back together here, so let's fire it up and give it a shot and see if it will run for us. Mower's back up and running. We're good to go. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it was helpful to you. Remember, I'm a pastor and a Christian, and I would love it if you took a chance to cruise over to that other video on how to become a Christian and just take a look. It's only 2 minutes. God bless you. Take care.